Who is Expo? So Expo, my real name is Dennis Nzuki. I was born in Eldoret, and we lived there for a couple of years before moving to Nairobi. Well, I'll tell you also that this music thing has been in our family lineage for quite a while. Going all the way back to my grandfather, Jonathan Mumu the late, who was a translator. He was someone who worked in the translation game. He translated English hymns to Kamba hymns. He was part of that team. He was also a church planter with the Anglican Church of Kenya. And basically, so my mom was a pastor's kid, and I'm just grateful for such a heritage. In fact, my mom used to tell us stories of how he was such into music, and the fact that her and her brothers and sisters would wait for him to go into the bathroom. And this is the late 60s, early 70s when they were young. So he goes into the bathroom, and then they make as though they are singing or rehearsing for church service. And they would sing off key. They'd sing off key just to irritate him, and he would not wait for his bath time to end. He would come out immediately with soap on his hair and with a towel draped around him and be like, it's not this way, it's supposed to be sung this way. And then he shows them, and then he goes back. So he was also passionate in the music scene. So together with his wife, Naomi, both are deceased now, they really worked with church choirs, especially in the Ukambani region, and that's the heritage that I come from. So how did I get saved? Well, growing up in a Christian home, both my dad and mom were believers. They grew up in Christian surroundings. I remember my very first encounter with God the picture of God was back in Eldoret, and this was at a crusade, those open air crusades, and Reverend Teresia Wairimu had come to Eldoret, and I credit her for being one of the first people who really showed me a picture of God that I'd never seen before. So we were at the crusade. Here I am, a young boy aged 4 or 5 4. I must have been 4. And I'm in the middle of the crowd, and all I'm seeing is people's waistlines. And then suddenly I just see people dispersing themselves as though forming a circle. And so I asked my mama, what's happening? What's happening? And then she whispered and she tells me into my ear that, God, we're moving because God is here. So I'm trying to see, it's dusk, so it's not that clear. So I'm trying to see who is this God, and I'm just seeing air. So that really left a question mark. Then my next important, I believe, encounter with God was when I was in class 4. Age 10 at the time. This was in 1994. So I was one of those children who class 1 was in 91, class 8 was in 1998. So in 1994, I remember I had 2 dreams on the same night. And the first dream that I had was I saw myself in a spiritual place, I'll say, where clouds were covering the floor, and they were well illuminated by some great light. And as I'm looking at this carpet of clouds, my eyes gaze all the way, and I see a figure, someone sitting on a throne. And I didn't see him clearly, but you could just tell this person has majesty. There's a way he made me feel. There's a response that I was having. And then I woke up. When I went back to bed, I had a second dream. And the second dream was I saw a flight of stairs, and there was this large being who was shepherding people up the stairs. And I was the very last one to shepherd the people up the stairs. Then when we got to about step number 4, I jumped down and fell off the staircase. Then he turned back, and then he ushered me and told me, there's room for you. Come. Then I woke up again. And now looking back, is when I realized that immediately after that dream, in that season, the gift of writing actually was awakened in me. And I think that those two encounters, it's like God was calling me from a young age. And then this gift suddenly manifests because I just got the urge and the idea to start writing stories. And I'm talking about, storybooks? Yes, storybooks. And funny thing is that all my stories, the way I crafted them, the main character would end up being a proponent of the gospel. So this person was preaching and teaching. So whether it was a hippopotamus in his family, an animal like a hippo. So the main character was a hippo, and he was evangelizing to fellow hippos. And those are the stories I wanted to write. And I was so consumed by it that it made my schooling suffer. So you remember we used to be given homework to go home with and finish that work at home. And my parents would think I'm actually doing homework. They are seeing I'm using my GHC book or mathematics book, but at the back of the book is where I would write my stories. So classwork is at the front. At the back, it's just stories of me writing. So my teachers in school would punish me for not doing my homework on time. So they'd make us kneel outside the classroom door, and you're doing your homework while kneeling on a concrete floor and doing it there. And there is a teacher who, let me not just mention her name, who was, I think, was very unfair because she used to label me as a lazy person. She used to label me, as a TV addict. You're always busy at home watching television, not doing homework. You're a bad boy and the like. But I was misguided. I wasn't bad because I wasn't writing nasty things and whatnot. It's just that I didn't have someone to shepherd me or to mentor me and to let me know this is how you divide your time. I was just so consumed in writing my stories. So the more that the abuse came, or the more that the labeling came, the more I was engrossed in writing these stories because they became life to me. So I got this ambition to become the youngest published author in Kenya. At the time, the youngest person was a 14-year-old girl in the US. And my target was, by the time I'm age 12, I'll be the youngest published Kenyan in Africa, the youngest published Kenyan in the world. So I tried to beat that, to attain that goal. But the more I wrote, the more my schoolwork suffered. So something amazing happened at mom's place of work. She was able to get me a typewriter. Believe it or not, I still have it somewhere at home. So on that typewriter, you could hear me banging on the keys, and it's the old typewriters, banging on the keys at night during holidays, waking dad up and him telling me to go and sleep. I was that kind of guy. And I thought that this would frame my life to become a journalist. And later on, I ended up doing journalism courses. I did a diploma in journalism in the future. And then later on, that is. And then after that, I did a public relations course. Anyway, that's jumping the gun. So into high school, continued with the same routine. During preps time, instead of, reading and catching up and being a good student, memorizing everything. So I was busy writing my stories. And while in high school, I moved from a Christian primary school to a really not Christian secondary school with a lot of negative influences. And I lost myself there, but I rededicated my life to Christ in Form 2 because I was one of those kids while in church at Sitam. At the time, it was NPC, Nairobi Pentecostal Church, Kisumu. But anyway, so so while at NPC, I would be that kid who would always answer the altar call because I didn't have the understanding that, getting saved is once and then you can be forgiven after and ask for forgiveness after. So while in Form 2, joined the CU for a bit, and then there was a sort of mini revival in school in the early 2000s, and then actually the year 2000 there was a revival in school. We'd wake up and pray. In fact, I was called upon one day to lead the prayers, and I would pray and even pray in tongues. So then came to a place where I joined the football team, and the football team was made up of guys, and I was the story topper. Those guys who always top the stories. So because these guys had weird stories and I was made to feel uncool about being in the CU, I didn't have a stand. So I gradually backslid because of negative influences and the like, and being cool in school, all that pressure. So fast forward to the year after completing high school. That gap year was a very key and defining year for me as you're waiting for your calling letter to university. So I didn't do well in my KCSE. I achieved an average grade, just enough to get me into university, or at least private uni. So in that gap year, I believe that I became a wayward son into mischief. All these visions that you see in the rappers' music videos, having a car with a lot of sound, and it's pimped up, quote unquote. That's when Pimp My Ride was out, and I didn't have the money. Not me, but my friends had money. So. At that place, I really was getting lost. So joined a Christian university, but also in that gap here, I had transitioned to writing music. So I transitioned to writing music just while I was in Form 2, and then took it up seriously after completing my O-levels or Form 4. And then, funny thing, in as much as I was living not a holy life, I was writing self-evangelical music. And this music would always convict me, but I've gone clubbing, I've done nasty things, drinking, racing on the streets, etc. Fast and Furious, I'll credit that to that bad influence to that movie, the very first one. Then I'd get home, look for creative outlet, and write Christian music. Train up a child in the way that he should go, and he will not depart from it. Because that conviction was still present and relevant in my life. So I remember joining a Christian university, and while there, I met up with Holy Dave, who I don't mind naming in this series, because he's one of the guys who ushered me into the gospel music scene. So while I was also in high school with him, but in high school we weren't that close, but after high school we became close. So while at university, I tried to hone the skill, but still the negative influences were there. And in fact, we really intensified we were big sinners. And I think the reason why the enemy would make sure that there's all this entertainment and money and flossy lifestyle around me is because God had called me earlier on in life. And I wasn't, in as much as, yes, I would attend church regularly and do vocational Bible school while younger, I don't think the word of God had taken deep root inside of me. And that's what I'll attribute that to. So I remember the next encounter with God I had, the third one, was during a Shaggy concert in 2005, I believe. And I remember it was at the Carnival restaurant, and there's the Simba Saloon and then the outer field where concerts used to be had. And I remember I was walking in between that place, and people are just passing me by. I mean, it's at night, Shaggy's over there singing Girl, You're My Angel and the like. And I just heard a voice asking me, what are you doing here? And that question was not necessarily asking me, what are you doing here? It was it isolated me. I felt alone with this being. whom I knew was God. Surprisingly, I knew it was him. And I didn't have an answer. And that voice kick-started my journey of separating from my friends, which was a painful journey, because these are guys we did life with from 1994 till the year 2005-6. Yeah, having to disconnect was not easy. Then I remember shortly after that, I rededicated my life to Christ. And once I rededicated my life to Christ, I joined a church by the name of the Waterbrook. And this is how I got to the Waterbrook. So I had a friend, still are friendly. His name is Jeff Njuguna. We had formed a secular rap group just before I gave my life to, rededicated my life to Christ again. And our secular rap group was called Nakizi. So we're taking some syllables from our surnames. So Njuguna, we took the Na. Nzuki, we took the Ki. And then we had a friend called Leshizi. So we added the Easy to it. So Nakizi Squad. We used to call ourselves Nakizi Squad. But I believe Jeff was also on his own journey of finding God. And that's how he met, I don't know how he knows, or met Pastor Peter Odera. But one of the Saturday afternoons or Friday, he invited me to come to church with him on a Saturday afternoon. Yeah, our services at the time used to be on Saturday afternoon. And I remember the message that he preached, what Pastor Pete preached on that day was on fathers. And at the time, our home was, coming from a home which had violence. My parents were estranged, and this young boy was lost. And yeah, that sermon really hit home. It hit home. And I remember going up for the altar call, not for salvation this time, but for prayer, for healing, I think. And for those who didn't have good relationships with their fathers, etc. And I wept. And it's not the silent weeping. And when you see a young man crying, hey, we cry ugly. When conviction hits home, we cry ugly. I've never seen a man cry till he met Christ. I cried. And from then on, I decided to be a frequent attendee of the Saturday services, which transitioned to Sunday, which transitioned into me serving in the church. And now we'll pick up the story from how I recorded my first album, titled 7, in the year 2007. I recorded it, but then released it in 2008. So keep it locked.